Welcome to the Rig on Wheels show featuring MVT. This is your first ever truck driving recruitment show. I am your host, Kameel Gaines, the CEO of Rig on Wheels. And joining me, of course, is Robert Pierson, our favorite VP of recruitment over there at Mesilla Valley Transportation. We are your ultimate destination for your hot jobs, industry news, recruitment tips. So let's definitely make history together. Did you have something to say, Pearson? You want to do a better job introducing yourself?
No, I think you got it correct, but I'll say it anyways. Robert Pierson, VP of Recruiting at Mesilla Valley Transportation, one of the larger private fleets in the country, and excited to be on this week like I am every week with you, Kameel.
So you're not going to say like our favorite VP? Because that's what we say is our favorite VP.
Top five. Top five, it depends on the audience.
Okay. So what we want to do is jump right into the news. The other day, was it yesterday? What's today? Tuesday, right? So it had to be yesterday. I sent you an email about the Mack truck, them walking out. I wanted to cry because I was like, what is going on? When it rains, it pours. I just wanted to walk out. That's like how I felt. So can you tell us what happened?
Yeah, so they're going on a strike there for Mack trucks. No clue on when this thing's going to end, how long it will last. The ramifications in the trucking industry will be heavy. The challenge right now is there's not a lot of spare money in these trucks. So trucks have gone up exponentially in price. If you'd looked at it about 5 years ago, a truck was averaging about $168,000 brand new. Now it's averaging anywhere between $200,000 to $225,000 brand new. This has a ripple effect and consequences. Even though a new owner operator may not necessarily go buy a new truck, they'll wait till a truck's 3 to 5 years old. It drives up those costs. There is signs that truck sales will be robust next year after they slowed down a little bit this year. But with that said, the cost gets passed on to the consumer one way or the other. And in this case with Mack, we're the consumer, and there's a ripple effect. So it starts with Mack. We got to watch what happens at the other OEMs, and we'll see how this plays out. But the challenge is it drives up cost. And that's going to be the hard part. These folks are paid well. I'm not trying to take sides in this thing, but these folks are not underpaid by any stretch of the imagination. They're doing quite well. They have good benefit packages, and so we'll see how this plays out. Obviously, the cost of living has gone up for their employees like it has for MVT employees, Rig on Wheel employees. Anybody's dealt with higher cost of living. But with that said, it comes at a bad time when freight levels are down on the spot market, and it's going to be the sooner it ends, the better. The longer it's drawn out, there's going to be consequences because it's a domino effect. But at the end of the day, Mack has to keep prices down at this moment here because they are at some point, I don't know when that level is, but there's a certain spot where you are unwilling to pay for a truck. And in particular with Mack or parts that this impacts, they're going to hit that level. And so I'm curious how this plays out, but it's unfortunate timing wise. It stinks. I think the labor views it as that they have leverage at this moment. So most likely this was the time to do it. But we'll see how it plays out. I'm not encouraged by it. I think it's going to cause more harm than good in the long run for the consumers. Just kind of what we're seeing, same thing with the UAW up there in Michigan with the big three automakers.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's supply and demand. As you're talking, I'm just going through my head. It's like the real estate industry, right? So everything connected to it. So you're talking to parts, right? Then you're talking about the used trucks. That's going to end up going up. The other uh, truck makers, of course, right? Supply and demand. So they're going to increase their trucks. And then I already said the used trucks, the parts. We're already short on mechanics. So I just see the ripple effect, the being horrible. The last time that this happened, the strike was for a couple weeks. I didn't go back and do dive into the research greatly, but I know this time we just can't afford this. So
Yeah, and
when I saw that, I was like, "You gotta be kidding me!" I
the
was,
challenge here, in order to be profitable, let's take the auto industry as an example. To be a profitable automaker, you have to be a large company. You literally have to, or your vehicles would be astronomically expensive. You have to have an assembly line where you can spread out those costs. The challenge there is these companies are so large. There are thousands of vendors they do business with, between side panels. You may have a vendor that their sole thing is to put one widget under the hood, but their livelihood depends on that one widget going under the
yeah,
hood. So you have the vendors, you have the employees involved with the strike, you have um, the consumer involved with it, and probably a bunch of secondary and third, all the way down to restaurants that happen to be right by the factory that depend on the business every day. So that ecosystem breaks down in this thing. And unfortunately, hopefully, this doesn't follow suit of what's happened with the UAW and the big three, because right now we're still in the propaganda stage where they tell you their spin on it, but it's somewhat dishonest. It's really what they want the narrative to be. And it's not till you start getting close to a solution that you find out what the real story is. Because you'll look on both sides of the fence when they throw out stats and stuff like that. You can manipulate stats to tell a story or selectively pull out certain statistics you don't want the general population to know. And so we're still in the propaganda stage of that one. We'll see how this plays out with Mac. I'm hoping it ends sooner than later, but I honestly have no clue. But the longer it goes on, it will have an impact on a lot of people's lives.
yeah. I need it to be over right away because it's starting to be a bit much, pretty dang blasted depressing. And like I said, I was like, I'm ready to walk out. I saw that. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. It was pretty bad. I was like, when it rains, it storms or monsoon.
Yep.
Yeah, I was like, I'm not even exaggerating. I could be extra sometimes, but I feel like I wasn't exaggerating this time. But what I want to do is go to our first commercial break, come back. I want to start diving into a few questions. We had driver question as well as recruiter questions that came in. So I want to kind of mix them throughout the different segments, if you would bear with us with that. So let's go to our first commercial, Katie. Thanks.
Be very realistic when you come into this industry, because for none of us, even behind the desk, it's not a 9 to 5 at all.
Yep.
You know, I ask my kids, I'm up at 2 a.m, working almost every day.
Power. Realize your power. Finding out myself. Finding out myself. Go where you wanna go. Do what you're gonna do. Do what you wanna do. Go where you wanna go. Get on with it. Come on, get on with it. Come on, get on with it. Come on, get on with it.
Thanks for coming back, everybody. Thanks for coming back. So, what I wanted to jump into is because at recruiting at rigonwheels.com, we received quite a few questions. Actually, Raven, the recruiting managers who brought them to my attention. Okay, so we received quite a few questions in regards to this industry and what's happening. and how do we deal with it? So I believe it was from a few third-party recruiters, and I just kind of want to tell my knowledge and the same thing I've been telling our third-party recruiters within Rig on Wheels. Okay, drivers within the last 3 years have not changed. So you as a recruiter have to be consistent. Let me go to the question. The industry has changed, especially this year. Companies have changed their requirements, starting to get tougher, changing. This is a time that they can up their brand. One. Two, relationship building is so important. Freight is so tight. So they want to make sure that the driver that is representing them is representing them well, can speak, great customer service. Their clothes look nice. They're not shucking and jiving when they're going into the yard or going into these dedicated accounts. They're not having flip-flops on. They're looking like a professional driver. Obviously, you're on the road. We're not thinking you're going to be in a three-piece suit, but literally, you're representing whatever company, ABC Trucking, I use that as just a generic trucking company, but let's use MVT. You're going to represent MVT properly, correct? So even if MVT's requirements have inched up a little or inched up a lot, that's one thing. But the driver in the last 3 years have not changed. We know that, correct? So what you have to do, whether you're a third-party recruiter or whether you're an internal recruiter, you have to be consistent, period. Don't throw in and just take whatever applications, take it and just see what is going to stick. No, you don't need to waste your time nor their driver's time, because there either is going to be another carrier that can take them or they can go to a warehouse. Don't waste anybody's time. It makes you be an amateur. Have more conversations, be consistent. Every day, know what your goal is and go after that goal. What your goal is going to be is having quality conversations. You want to screen your drivers. You want to go to the next step and ask questions. If they are coming in for a particular division or a particular engineered lane and that's closed, and then all of a sudden they say, oh, I'll do something over the road where it'll have me out 2 weeks. Why the change? Don't just put them in for that. That makes no sense. They're not going to show up for orientation. If they do, they're going to quit after a week, or they're going to be sluggish on the job. They're not going to build a correct relationship, and it's going to make you look bad if you're an internal recruiter or a third-party recruiter. You're not going to get any referrals. Your company is not going to get any good reviews. It just makes for a bad. And as a third-party recruiter, you need your own ecosystem. So that doesn't make sense. You want your drivers as happy as can be. So you want to put them in the best situation that's good for them. So have them explain to you, why is this okay now? What is important? If family is important, how is this going to work out for their family? You want Mr. Driver to be happy when it comes to his mom. You want him to be happy when it comes to his wife, his kids, whomever it is, whatever his why is. So your goal is not a particular number. It's to make sure you're having the quality conversations and make sure you're having them consistently. You know that the requirements are different now, right? That is something you can control. Always control what you can control, because there are things that you can't control. So stop trying to control the things that you can't control. That sums up about 5 questions. So I don't know if that came from the last podcast, Pearson, and I did last week, but it was like 5 different questions from recruiters. So they were all very similar to that. Anything you want to say to that, Pearson?
Yeah, I would say as the current industry and market with jobs has been frustrating for drivers, I would point out to drivers it's been frustrating for recruiters. Recruiters, honestly, are used to being in a position where they can help you quickly and move on and get a bunch of people happy. I have one of the best jobs in the world. I get to hear and tell people you're hired every week. This has been new. This has been more what other people in other industries have dealt with for a long time. So the recruiter and the driver in that conversation need to be patient, need to be detailed, and need to be forthright and honest with themselves, honest with the person that they're corresponding with on the phone. You will ultimately find the job that you want. You may be at the job that you want already and just don't realize it yet. Take the time, be detailed, both as the driver and the recruiter in that scenario. Um, this is not going to get better right away. And so, as the recruiter and the driver, that relationship becomes imperative that you over communicate to each other. Be very in touch with that. And the other thing I will tell drivers on that end and recruiters, be committed to an orientation date. At any company you go to, if you say, I am going to start on this date and show up on this date, do it, because it used to be that, if you didn't show up on that day, it wasn't that big a deal. You could reschedule. Most companies, they're focused on time percentage. If you don't show up for orientation when you commit on it, there is literally strike one. There's no reason to move on. As a recruiter, have the conversation with the driver about, hey, do you understand the environment that you're in right now? Hey, is this a good orientation date for you? Because if it's not, we need to be forthright on that right in the get-go. When are you looking to start a new job? And do that through the pay, the home time, the whole 9 yards. It matters right now. And hopefully, both as recruiters and as a driving market, we come out of this thing better. But we need to over communicate and be detailed. I much rather see a recruiter have a longer conversation than normal with a qualified candidate, both qualified as far as their background as well as what they're looking for, than to waste it on 50 people that you're trying to feed them something they don't want. It's not good for the driver, and it's honestly not good for the recruiter in that scenario. Use your time wisely. Your most valuable asset is your time.
That is two phrases that I'm going to be telling Rig on Wheels tomorrow. Over communicate and be a person of your word. That's what we're going to say. Over communicate and be a person of your word. Because you just don't want people fiddling with your time. Fiddling, I don't know how it's going to come up on the transcript, but that's going to be a phrase that I'm ready to see with the transcript, how it's going to spell it. But yeah, definitely. That's awesome. So now we have drivers that have come, they're newer drivers within the last 3 years. And no, being 3 years in, 3.5 years in, you're not new. So I don't mean you're new, but you are newer. You're not 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 20 years. But what I mean by this is you are post-pandemic driver, right? And now incomes are starting to settle. You're not making $100,000, $90,000 with 6 months experience in Alabama doing drive-in, right, on I-10. What would you say to that driver that said, back in 2000, early 2022, I was making, $1,800, $1,900 a week, and now, XYZ company is trying to pay me $1,525. I can't pay my bills on that.
Yep. I'm going to say a couple things here. Let's realize the industry that we're in right now. Now, the worm will turn and the arms race for drivers will come back. Generally, our industry goes through 18-month cycles where it goes down and it comes back up and it goes down and it comes back up. With that said, all of the trucking companies compete for the same customers. And so if I come to a customer and say, I'm going to charge you 20 more cents a mile, the customer does not have a lot of incentive to have that discussion with me. So you have to make sound financial decisions. I've looked over the last 2 years, and I want to say about 59% of the drivers that we've hired in the last 2 years, we verified less than 2 years of experience on them. May not have been consecutive, may have been before that time. But those drivers are in an environment where we've been able to keep pay somewhat stabilized in terms of their weekly averages, and we definitely have not cut pay. But with that said, they were most likely going onto a job board, putting in their phone number and averaging 25 to 30 calls from recruiters to the point where they had to turn the phone off. You will still get those 25 to 30 calls from recruiters. Those calls have not ended. The challenge is going to be is you're not going to get an offer that is overwhelming where, hey, Mr. Driver, you live in Jacksonville. I can get you home every day at $1,800. That job does not exist right now. And in particular, if you're not some grizzled vet with every endorsement under the sun, you should not be looking for that job. You need to be looking at what's important to you. From a budgetary standpoint, now's not the time to go out and buy a brand new car. A, the interest rates are high, and B, you do that when the money is good. You need to recognize the money in the industry is not bad by U.S. household standards, but compared to what we were seeing this time last year, it is not good. There's a lot of people in this country that would like to be making truck driver money, but we cannot treat the bad times like they're the good times. We have to recognize where we are right now. This has been a couple years in the making. This was bound to happen. It is what it is. Do not go out and purchase a new home right now. It's not the time to go buy a vehicle. Be realistic about what it is and focus on home time, and more importantly with pay, focus on consistency. So as an example, one of the things, and I'm a little biased here at MVT, is we have averages that we give on these jobs of what our average is. And when I say average, that means that the people that ran the full allotment of time that they were expected to be on the road for the week, 90% of my fleet is within this number. So that's where we get into that consistency part of it. I much rather have a consistent paycheck. Even when times are good, look, your miles might do this from 1 week to the next. Do you budget for the big week in a month, or do you use the bad week in the month to budget? I would argue it's closer to the bad week. You do not want to use your best week to budget for your home, your family. Kameel, you have a business, and a lot of this in trucking is seasonal. There's some parts of the year that are probably going to be busier than other parts of the year. When you budget for your business, do you take the busiest month of the year and say, well, I'm going to apply this to the next 12 months? Or do you try to take an average or maybe even a low and go, I need to budget off of this, and anything else I make above, that's gravy. That's fantastic. We got to do that with our personal lives, and we have to think of ourselves as our own business entity. We take the low end, we use that to budget for. It might not mean that we're living like Donald Trump in the middle of a truck. That's okay. And I will tell anybody, when you're out on the road, act like you're on the road. Don't go eat out every single meal.
Right.
Don't buy the jacket that you see that says Portland on it and you've never been to Portland, but you saw a jacket at the truck stop. I'd much rather save $10 here, $20 here to a couple of years from now be able to afford a home or that car. So make smart decisions and be realistic. This is not a great time in trucking. As a driver, if you think that it is and you're going to get paid like that, you are going to be dissatisfied with every job that you go to. And you're really going to hate it because you're most likely going to start needing to jump around a lot or feel like you need to jump around a lot. And then once you come to me with your application and you have 12 jobs in the last 3 years, I can't help you because I don't want a 2-month driver. So it's one of those things to be cognizant of. Identify. This is not the good times. That will come again, but this is not it.
A job hopper right now is not considered a quality driver.
I won't hire it. I don't want to hear the exceptions because it's a losing proposition for me.
Yeah, you're just not at this moment. That moment might come again, but at this moment, when your rent and your mortgage needs to get paid, we're talking about right now. We're not talking about later when the tides turn and all of that type of thing. We're talking about right now. What I always want to know is, what can you live with? What is your must-haves in your next job? That type of thing. Especially during times like this. I like to be very realistic. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer or anything like that, but I don't want anybody to make poor decisions for themselves, their family, or whatever your why is. I don't want to keep saying family, because if that's not your why, then let's not do that, and that's not even a big deal, right? So if it's not your why, it's not your why. If something else is your why, then if your collection of sports cars is your why, then that's what it is. That's fine. But whatever is your why, what can you live with? What is it? So you don't jump around. We can make sure we find the best job for your particular scenario. That is what's important at this time, because it just seems like every week something is blowing up. Right now you got the Mack truck situation, so something is blowing up. So at Rig on Wheels, our job is to make sure that we get put you in the best position for your why, whatever is the most important thing to you. So what type of questions are your internal recruiters running into? Like, what certain things does Josue, and I know Josue will be with us next week. I'm so excited about that.
Yeah.
But what kind of things is he running into?
Yeah, the trend right now that a lot of drivers are at is we're still dealing with a lot of drivers that have seen their pay go down. And I mean, not just pay cuts, but the carriers that were paying company drivers 70 to 75 cents a mile, those companies have gone out of business, or the customers have dried up and left. And so we're still getting a lot of that of, well, I got to make this amount of money. Don't just look at mileage rate. Look at what the week's going to look like. Not all miles are created equal. If I pay you 70 cents a mile, but I'm only going to get you 1,100 miles a week, that is not a good week for an experienced truck driver. Look at the whole body of work and try to calculate what I'm going to make out on a weekly basis. That is the big thing right now as we talk to drivers, though, that drivers have trouble mixing and matching. The rate per mile is one factor in a much larger picture. And that's where we get into what you talked about in the initial portion of this discussion, was have a detailed conversation with your driver. It is not about miles. It is not about the pay per mile. It's about the entire body of work and what you're looking for. And that's the thing. You cannot get that in a 1-minute conversation. Have that first thing to make sure you're qualified, the company's qualified for you, and then get into the nitty gritty and try to create that picture. Don't simply go, hey, what's your rate per mile? Nope, too low, not high enough, and hang up. Have that discussion of, okay, what's that on a weekly basis, and how did you come out to that weekly average? That number means a lot more. Do not go chasing a couple extra cents a mile right now. There's a catch to it. If that rate seems too good to be true or seems on the high end, you either have to do something that's extremely labor intensive. I won't mention it, but there's a bunch of little stores out in the rural sticks or in parts of town that are dangerous that you'll see those places, and you'll get a really good rate per mile on those runs. Your safety may be in question, but you will get a really good rate per mile on those runs. You will hate the job, though, and it's why they have turnover of 100 to 200% on it. Ask the question, what's my rate per mile? How many miles am I going to run? Tell me what I'm going to average per week, because you need to take into account accessorial pay, layover, detention, breakdown, any of those things you may face before you can come to the conclusion of this is financially a good choice for me. We run into that a lot. We're having to go away from the rate per mile. We'll still talk about it openly, but hey, let's dig into this a little bit more. Is this going to be a good job for you?
Yeah. So when you say rate per mile, I always, and I try not to chuckle on the phone and tell the recruiters not to chuckle, but it is pretty funny when a driver only wants to talk about rate per mile. It's definitely a marketing thing. And if you are where you're touching freight and stuff like that, so that is different because you're getting paid differently. It's rate per mile and unload pay and things like that. So those jobs are a little different. But if you're not touching freight and all of you want to know is your cent per mile, do know that that is just a marketing ploy. So if you are a driver that needs to know just straight up is about the pay, then let's talk about your average pay. Don't talk about the cent per mile because the cent per mile doesn't mean a hill of beans if you're not getting any miles. And typically the driver that asks about the cent per mile doesn't ask about how many miles, and companies know that. So I
Yep.
want drivers to know that that's don't do that.
And look, if you are doing a lot of live load deliveries, that cent per mile means even less. Now, we primarily do drop and hook on the majority of our freight, but if you're going to a carrier and it's a lot of live load stuff, your detention pay becomes even more important than your rate per mile because your detention pay really determines what your week's going to be. So do not get caught up in one aspect of it. You need to get a much larger perspective of the overall body of work.
Yeah, definitely. And you want to know what your average weekly pay is. If the pay is a driving factor, that's what you want to know is your average weekly pay. You not the cent per mile because that can be spent so many ways and it's typically not going to be spent the way that you think it is. So that's one. Because you mentioned something, I want to ask you this question. And recruiters ask this, all recruiters ask this. And because we are in such a strange time, I want to ask you. At this time, to our favorite VP, oh, that tickled me. Anyway, how do you get verification now for companies that are out of business and did not report to DAC?
Yeah, we get somewhat creative on that. I will say this, and this is why it's important for a driver to hold on their paperwork, is hell, if you can show me bill of ladings, paycheck stubs. I've gotten into it where I've not had enough paycheck stubs and I've taken pictures of a truck, but theoretically anybody can go to a truck stop and take a picture of themselves next to a truck. That's not that hard. The big thing right now I tell any driver, and it will save you a bundle, hold on to your paperwork. And there's a lot of folks that don't want to admit to it. Trust me, a common line in recruiting I'll hear is, there was a fire and I lost all my paperwork. I have at least 3 to 4 drivers a week that claim they were in a house fire, which statistically can't be true because it's not the lot lizards we got to worry about. It would appear that we have arson problems in our industry. Hold on to your paperwork because if you have the bill of ladings, you have paycheck stubs, anything along those lines, we'll use that information to verify that. We have been able to bring on several people over the last month where they were at a carrier that either went out of business or, quite frankly, the carrier's being unprofessional and not assisting us like they legally have a responsibility to. But that paperwork ends up telling the story, and we're able to get very creative to get somebody that VOE. The big thing is if you go out of a company that goes out of business and you don't have any pay information, no copies of bill of ladings, never took a picture, have no number of a previous coworker that we could look with, plus see on their LinkedIn that they worked at that company, you make it very hard for yourself to get a job. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is. Hold documentation for at least 3 years. It will make your career prospects substantially easier. And look, when I have 10 trucks open and I have 15 qualified candidates, if you're the one out of the 5 that's not going into a truck, it may be because, quite frankly, I'm taking a risk because I can't verify stuff. Hold on to your paperwork.
Okay. I like it. So what I would do...
The big part, let me add this too, because the big part comes from a legal standpoint. If I get taken to court, God forbid something happens and I'm in a deposition, that attorney is going to go to the fact of how'd you verify his experience? And if I just say that I'm basing it off of a hunch, I am going to get taken to the woodshed.
Okay.
My career effectively, because of that driver's actions on the road, it's not so much the driver got me fired. It's the fact that I said, I can't verify any of it, but we stuck him in the truck. My career at that point is effectively over.
Okay, I got you. But you gave us some real good, at least 3 different things we can walk away with. So, okay, got it. So thank you for that, because that's some hard pieces. That's good. Paycheck stubs, paperwork, and bill of lading.
Yep.
Love it. Okay, cool. So what we want to do is go to a commercial, come back, and talk about how jobs or the area.
Hi, my name is Jim Prickett, and I've been here 17 years, going on 18 right now, and the reason I've stayed is I've enjoyed the people, been treated really nice, and it's close to home, and it's been perfect for me. The way I became a truck driver here at MVT was the company I was working for went out of business, and I found it on advertisement and called up and liked what I heard about the company, and so I started working here. A normal day for me would be picking up a load here at Nashville Yard and headed to the Northeast. The challenging parts is just being able to plan the trip so that you can get up there and deliver on time and pick up on time and get back. Well, the work environment that I've been in here with MVT, they let the drivers plan their time to get up there. And you have to understand the how long it's going to take to drive as far as you got to drive. You've got to understand the driving cycles of when is the best time to drive. You know, you've got to plan all of that so that you can do your job, which is deliver the load on time. The safety program here at MVT is pretty comprehensive. We have to do training every year on the computer with all the new stuff that comes out. Be sure that we know all the regulations that we have to work under. Be sure that we understand how many, our driving hours. The Smith system, which has also been very good for us as far as you maintaining awareness of things around you so that you can be safe. A lot of training to keep you growing as a driver. And if you want to, like I did, the new drivers that are fresh out of school, we take them on the road for 60,000 miles, and we teach them how to behave and act when you're out there on the road. We have cameras in the trucks to make sure that you are in your lane, you're not tailgating somebody, you're not going too fast. It really does help you a lot. Working here at MVT has helped me grow as far as knowing what goes on within the company, because I have had a good relationship with the dispatchers and the terminal managers, and I've grown by knowing what is going on behind the scenes, behind me, other than what I am doing out on the road. I would recommend MVT for any drivers out there that like to drive and make money. It's been very, very good. I can't say anything but good things about how I've been treated and what you will receive here at MVT. I'd just like to say thank you to MVT for having me for 18 years and putting up with me and the stuff that I have received from them. Like I said, I have received the motorcycle giveaway for the fuel mileage. They have sent me on a retreat with other veterans in trucking, and they have been very, very good to me when I have needed time off and support for my family and what I need as a person.
Love it. Welcome back. I love that commercial. I'm not going to cry, but it did make me, kind of sensitive, a little bit sensitive. So I really like that. He's been MVT for a long time. That's awesome.
Yeah. James is a good guy, and a couple of other people in that commercial that we ran are there in the terminal. There's a guy named Jason and Nate. Jason's the terminal manager. Nate is one of the fleet managers out there in Nashville, and they are very passionate about doing what's best for the driver. They have close relationships with most of the folks based at the Nashville terminal. Literally know everybody by name. It's not part of them trying to put on a show. They legitimately want to know your name, what's important to you, where you like to run, how you like to run, and so it's cool to see them in there. And James is a nice guy, military vet, served the country for a long period of time, and that motorcycle actually is a topic that I'm pretty confident we'll talk about before this is all over when it comes to fuel economy. So it used to be a motorcycle. Due to liability purposes, it's now a car, but he was one of those winners, and that's one of the big things that we get asked about on that fuel bonus is, do I have to live somewhere in the Southwest to win that fuel bonus? You don't. James is an example of it. He was basically running Tennessee up to Pennsylvania, New York, which is not flat land. It's a lot of the Appalachian Mountains, but he was able to get the fuel economy because he operated the vehicle efficiently.
Yeah, so that definitely answers that. No, then that's definitely not flat land. That's the opposite of that, for sure. Wow. Yeah. Thank you. So let's definitely jump into it. Let's talk about what's open, what areas. I know we have engineered lanes and stuff, but lately we've been talking about areas, and I like areas because it's old school recruiting.
Well, I'll do both today. We'll talk about a few very select jobs that I have open right now, and then we'll also talk about some hot areas. We have, like I said, we have a limited number of trucks, limited number of positions available. I have 5 openings for people based in El Paso. So if you live in the El Paso marketplace, I know that Bryce and the folks there will get that phone number ready when we're done in the conclusion of this, instead of me just putting them on the gun like I did last week. We have 5 openings for Division 300 out of El Paso. This is the run that's going to have you go from El Paso to DFW, Denver, back down to El Paso again. You're going to get home every 3.5 to 4 days. You're going to take your 34-hour reset and restart that process all over again. Realistically becomes a job where you're making $80,000, $85,000 a year, but you get home every 4 days and end up having a pretty balanced life at home and on the road. I have 4 openings right now for Division 440 out of Memphis. So if you live out of Memphis at this moment, 440 is a unique opportunity that's going to have you going from Memphis down to the southeast, over to Texas, back up to Memphis. Going to average about $1,400 a week. It's a lot of drop and hook freight. You're going to get home on a weekly basis with that job. And out of Memphis, the hard thing right now, because the intermodal freight's struggling, it's not very consistent out there. This is one of the most consistent paying jobs in Memphis that you're going to find, because we aren't as heavily reliant on the rails as a lot of the intermodal business that makes up a huge part of Memphis's freight base. Thank you for the phone number, 281-968-3100. So Division 300 to 440. Call your recruiter today if you live out of El Paso, out of Memphis, and tell them that you're interested in that division. They'll have all the information for you on it, and they'll like it. Additionally, let's talk about some general area. One more specific opening. I need a team out of Laredo, Texas. If you live out of Laredo, Texas, you're going to run primarily Laredo, Houston, and San Antonio, and keeping that truck operating constantly with a team. The shift starts Monday morning, early Monday morning. You get weekends off. So literally the average driver on that's going to make about $1,700 a week. The key is you need to be part of a pre-made team that's $3,400 combined. At 64 cents a mile, it's a whole lot of drop and hook and trailer relocations. That team that will literally work a Monday through Saturday morning shift. You'll get your reset at home every single weekend like clockwork. So if you know anybody, or you are part of a team, or you know somebody that you would like to team with that lives out of Laredo, we would definitely take somebody for that team opportunity. So be sure to call that number as well. Additionally, right now, the big division for us is out of Nashville and continues to be Division 400, but we have some other opportunities for teams. I could take teams to run fairly high mile runs out of El Paso, Albuquerque, and Dallas. El Paso, Albuquerque, and Dallas give us an opportunity. We do a lot of southern U.S. coast to coast. And so if you're a team that's part of those locations, that's exciting. And again, solo drivers, we would look out of Nashville, St. Louis, Dallas, Laredo, San Antonio, El Paso, Albuquerque right now are our big areas that we're always looking for other capacity, other drivers to fill a number of other divisions that we have.
Perfecto. Love it. We're excited about that. Deborah is super excited because she loves teams. So that's what she's excited about that. Okay.
2 for 1.
Awesome. Yes, 2 for 1. So awesome. So what we're gonna do is go to commercial, and then when we get back, we want to talk about the fuel. And I know you're gonna talk about the fact that you used to do motorcycles. Now we're giving away the cars, but we're gonna talk about the fuel efficiency. Yes. So we're gonna go ahead and play the car giveaway commercial.
Mi nombre es Carlos Vázquez, tengo trabajando 3 años aproximadamente y somos B1 y andamos en territorio de Estados Unidos. Lo que me gusta de MVT es que tiene buenos viajes, buenos camiones y muy buenas millas. Mi comunicación con el despacho es muy buena y todo eso y siempre están a la orden del día. ¿Qué pienso del equipo de los camiones? Pues que están muy bien y les dan sus mantenimientos, sus PO y todo lo demás, alineación y balanceo, todo, cambio de llantas y excelente servicio. La compañía cada trimestre regala un auto para los operadores. Me motiva pues a crecer más como persona y pues, para dar el 100, como dicen, para la compañía.
Thanks. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. Okay, so Pierson is going to take us through first tell us how they used to give away motorcycles, but of course, liability, you don't want anybody splattered over the road. And then...
Yes, motorcycles can be safe if you've driven them before. If you win one and you've never driven one before, bad things can somewhat happen when you're given a Harley Davidson that has a whole lot of oomph behind it. So we don't do the motorcycles anymore. James, in the commercial from a couple commercials ago, talked about that, but he was part of that fuel bonus that we have here that's really unique and somewhat innovative for our industry, I think would be a good word to use for that. So our best fuel economy for the quarter goes for the best driver that has the best fuel economy for the quarter, gets a brand new car, normally a 2023 Nissan Sentra. Beautiful car. We've given it out for multiple divisions. So it does help if you live in the West and you ride the Santa Ana winds. But as James points out there in Nashville, it really comes down to driver behavioral habits more than anything else. So you can do it running 430 out of Jacksonville. You could do it running 400 out of Nashville. Any of those divisions are eligible for it, and it's the ability to do it is there. And it comes down to great pre-planning, not having your foot down to having the acceleration down to the floor constantly, utilizing the wind when it's your asset, when it's your friend. It can be done. We work with our drivers. We have a whole department, driver services, that their sole job is to train you up and give you every resource available to get as good at your job as you possibly can do. We do that out of proven techniques. We have drivers, our very seasoned drivers, that contribute into those factors. So it's not just people sitting in an office going, I do it this way. Just like somebody looking at, Patrick Mahomes and going, if I was throwing a 50-yard spiral, I'd do it this way. These are actually people that have done the job before that will help you get that. And the person that gets the best fuel economy over the course of the year gets a $25,000 bonus. Less Uncle Sam takes his part there, but it's a nice bonus at the end of the year on top of what you'd already normally be making. We do it every quarter because we do driver appreciation every quarter as well, where some companies do a driver appreciation and it varies what that is. Once a year, we have one that we open up all of our terminals and we do it 4 times a year. Part of that driver appreciation is we do the car giveaway. So I always tell anybody that's not in El Paso, if you're in the Laredo yard or the Nashville yard, and magically Royals there, followed by about 8 TV cameras, somebody's probably getting a car.
That's awesome, though. And one part that you did not really talk about is, I think the most important part to me is that you all work with the drivers to kind of coach them up if this is what they want to obtain. If they want the
Yeah,
car, then you coach them to getting the car.
yeah, our driver services group does a good job with that, and we'll work closely with you in combination with the fleet manager and planner that you work with. Um, Additionally, if you're middle of the pack, it's not the end of the story. You may not get that car this quarter, but the majority of the people that end up winning it, if you look at them previously, they were somewhere in the middle of the pack. They were not continuously in that top 10. They got better at what they did and evolved into that driver. So the key that I tell anybody, be a current MVT driver or a future MVT driver, is if you're not in the leaderboard, get obsessed about it, take some focus in it. And the big word that we use around here is professionalism. Professionalism's wanting to be the best at what you do. There is nothing wrong with that fact. And it generally pays off in your weekly pay going up. But it's nice when you can drive home and the missus comes out and, how was your week? Oh, this little thing. Yeah, I got a new car. That helps. Life
Yes,
gets
it does.
very nice at that point.
Yes, it does. So if you want to be with a company that is definitely willing to do driver appreciation every quarter, coach you up to getting the car, that is something that most companies out here are not doing. That's pretty good when it comes to the fuel efficiency, having engineered lanes so you can get home more regularly. Definitely give us a call at 281 968 3100. 281 968 3100. We recruit for MPT and other companies as well, but 281 968 3100, or go to the website rigonwheels.com and fill out an Intella app. rigonwheels.com. So next week we're actually going to be in Mansfield at the main studio. So we'll be there, and our internal MVT recruiter will be there, right, Josue? He's going to be there?
Yep. I have Josue will be with me, lock, step, and barrel.
Yeah, so we are excited about that. So that's where we'll be at on Tuesday. So if you have any questions or anything, go ahead, text us, email us at recruiting@rigonwheels.com. You can text the 3100 number, 281 968 3100. And we'll definitely get back to you or answer the question live on Tuesdays. All right. See you guys later. Did you have anything else to say, Pearson?
No, we technically covered a lot very quickly.
We really did. We
Yeah.
covered a lot. Yeah, we went from A through Z, definitely. And even did a little crying there. I did. Maybe not you. Next week, we'll have Pearson cry. So tune in for that next week. All right. Bye, everybody. See you on Tuesday, 3 o'clock, 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. Bye-bye.